What's going on, guys? This is the first official Sdotbell MMA Pocast. I'm actually on the train right now. I'm excited to do this. I've been thinking about this for a while, so I decided why not. Now's as good a time as any. On this podcast, my goal is to talk about everything under the sun that interests me, and that includes MMA, boxing, martial arts, specifically Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, capoeira, wrestling, all that good stuff. So today we're just going to jump right into it. Actually, I'm supposed to have one of my good friends, Mike IL, and hopefully he'll be on the next one. But let's just jump right into it. First, let me talk a little bit about who I am, why I would want you guys to listen to my podcast. Why am I an opinion that you should listen to? So for those of you that don't know, I actually live in China. I live in Guangzhou, China, which is South China. If you're thinking of what's the weather like, it's similar to Florida in terms of the humidity. It's got like a semi-tropical climate. I have lived here for almost 5 years. I'm a martial artist at heart. I am a purple belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I practiced capoeira for the better part of 5 years. I also train boxing, wrestling, and one of my goals is to become a professional mixed martial artist. My goal is to one day fight at the highest level, whether that be one championship, LHW, the UFC, and I believe very much that I'm going to achieve that goal. Actually, next month I'm going to be competing in a tryout in Singapore, so hopefully something comes to fruition there. But that just gives you guys a little bit idea of my background as it comes to martial arts, it comes to this type of stuff, MMA, which is why some of you may have seen some of my sparring videos, whether it be wrestling sparring, MMA sparring, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, or you see me play capoeira. Again, and I'll take this time to say this because I'm not going to beat the point home. If you like my videos, like each video that you watch and subscribe. So I want you guys to definitely check that out. But for today's podcast, what I really wanted to jump into is just some of the current stuff that's going on in as of right now, the UFC, because that's the biggest thing. It's actually Monday afternoon here in China, or Monday morning, probably about 2 or 3 a.m. in the United States. So folks have just gotten finished with the Anthony Smith and Volkan Ozdemir fight that just happened on Saturday. You know, that's still on a lot of people's minds. So that's the first thing I want to talk about. And in this fight, I picked Anthony Smith to win, and he actually ended up getting that win. It was really tough fight, actually. In those first few rounds, Volkan Ozdemir was definitely giving him a lot of trouble, and I feel like Anthony underestimated Volkan's power. And Volkan, you've seen some of his fights, he's got what they call that touch of death, that one-punch power that just put guys out. And obviously he wasn't able to do that with DC, because DC was able to retain his light heavyweight title because of that. But you could see that it was wearing on Anthony Smith in this fight. Like, he was catching some of those kicks and those punches, and he was struggling. And this is where his skill set in terms of his jiu-jitsu really kind of had an opportunity to shine and show through, because I was watching that fight, and I started to lose confidence in his ability to win that fight, because when Volkan landed, it was clearly affecting him. He was having a lot of trouble with the power and the kicks, but the thing is, he did something that a lot of fighters truly need but don't all have, which is he fought through it, and that's super duper important. You know, like, who are you when the chips are down? Who are you when you're in a situation where you know, if I don't do this, I'm going to lose this fight? And that's the type of situation he was in when it came to fighting Volkan. Volkan was putting him down, but he switched gears. He's like, I'm not going to sit here and just keep striking with this guy. He took him to the ground, and he was able to get the rear naked choke finish, which was pretty impressive. And what this also shows is that Volkan Ozdemir has a lot of holes in terms of his ground game, because this is the second instance where he's been taken to the ground. He's been finished on the ground, whether it be here with the rear naked choke, or with what DC was able to do with him in terms of the ground and pound when he got him in the crucifix and was able to finish the fight in their title fight. So to me, this shows on Volkan's end where he needs to start to put his focus. He's a very solid striker. A lot of the European guys are very good strikers, but he's got a lot of holes in his ground game, and so that's a big one that he's really got to work on. But it was an entertaining fight. It was super entertaining. I didn't expect it to be that close. I actually thought because of the way Anthony Smith is built, his size, and what I've seen in terms of his other fights, that he was going to run away with it. But this just goes to show how tough Volkan is, which also adds to the fact that DC is really, truly a beast at light heavyweight and heavyweight. Because the way that DC handled Volkan Ozdemir, he made it look easy. And to see how much Anthony Smith struggled with Volkan Ozdemir lets you show that he's no easy task to deal with. So this just should add to the legend that is Daniel Cormier. All right. So the next fight that I really loved that was on that card was the GOAT, the man himself, Artem Lobov versus Michael Johnson. Now this fight was also a good fight. To me, Artem, because of his record and because we joke about him being the GOAT and everything, doesn't get enough credit for what he does. And to think this guy has been Conor McGregor's sparring partner for the longest time, for 10 plus years. Actually, in between one of the rounds, you heard Jim Kavanaugh say, "You've seen that left hand for 10 years." So this is nothing new. And actually, I think Artem did very well. And this goes to show that the type of skill set that he has. His record doesn't adequately reflect the type of skill set that Artem Lobov has. If you really watch that fight, he gave Michael Johnson a lot of trouble, and a part of that is why I think he wasn't able to give him more trouble is his reach. Michael Johnson had something like an 8-inch reach advantage, which is very significant, especially when you're fighting at distance with the guy. And Michael Johnson he's got really long arms, he's got good height, so he's able to keep Artem at bay, and that forced him to struggle throughout that fight. And actually, I could argue that Artem won at least 2 rounds. I say he definitely won one of the first 2 rounds, and you could argue that he won the second. But Michael Johnson was landing, and Artem was landing too, was catching Michael with some good shots, and it was definitely something that Michael had to adjust to. And Michael Johnson did the smart thing in the 3rd round when he got the takedown. And that takedown that he landed was able to secure the victory for him, because he could argue that, again, one of those 2 rounds he won, one of those Artem won one. Even his coach said it was 1-1. And then in that 3rd round, he did what he needed to do to secure. And the thing is, taking a fight at 2 weeks' notice and showing that you have that type of cardio is a big deal. And this puts the rest of the featherweight division on notice that when it comes to Michael Johnson. And he's no slouch. This is a guy that touched and wobbled Khabib. Even though it didn't stop him, he wobbled Khabib. He's beat Dustin Poirier. He's beat some tough guys. He's fought very tough opponents, And now he's showing that he has the skill set to survive in this new division. The weight cut doesn't seem to be too big of an issue. The fact that he only on 2 weeks' notice, he only missed making weight by 1 pound was, that's pretty fair. We can't really knock him for that, even because he took the fight on such short notice. So respect to Michael Johnson on that. It was a great fight. It's very entertaining, and well-deserved win for him, I would say. But yeah, those were the 2 biggest fights. The other fights I did catch them, but I wasn't too interested in it. But the next thing that I'm really looking forward to is coming up next weekend, November 3rd, is UFC 230. And even though we've had some ups and downs with this card, in terms of guys having to pull out, fights getting canceled, the weird main event that was gonna be, but is it anymore? But it looks like it's shaping up to be a really, really good card, one of the best cards of the year. On the top of that bill, we've got DC, Daniel Cormier, who is the current light heavyweight and heavyweight champion, versus Derek Lewis, the Black Beast, the monster himself. So let's talk a little bit about that, then. I'm gonna just go ahead and say it right now. DC's gonna win that fight. DC does it, in my opinion, even though people are starting to open up more to him, he doesn't get the respect that he deserves. Now, DC is, has been a long-time champion in light heavyweight, and yes, there are folks that are going to, shout the argument of Jon Jones this, Jon Jones that. And the thing about it is, DC has done all that he's done, and he's kept a clean record. He's a person that he's like a model citizen, and so some could argue that he's kind of a cornball in that way. But to me, that shows just what the type of stand-up guy that he is, that he's able to be a champion and never get in trouble and never be flagged for anything. And to me, he's one of the pound-for-pound greatest of all time. And if he's able to defend his title, his first title defense as a heavyweight here, he'll be the first double weight champion to ever defend a title, which is pretty freaking cool. And I think he's going to do that. Now with DC, when it comes to DC style, he's got that boxer, kickboxer style that is amplified because he's such a fantastic wrestler. And so, DC striking is top notch when it comes to the light heavyweight and the heavyweight division. He's got the power behind the hands. He's able to get in there. He's a short guy. DC's my height. I'm 5'11" too. He's my height, but he gets in there and he puts his hands on these guys and they feel it. And it's going to be the same with Derek Lewis. But one thing that makes DC kind of stand out is his speed and his pace at heavyweight. He can carry that weight around. And DC is actually one of my favorite fighters to watch and kind of study and to take ideas from because of his style as a great boxer and kickboxer. And people might argue like, oh, DC is a very, very good kickboxer because he comes from AKA, the American Kickboxing Academy, and you may not see it enough or you may not catch it enough, but his kickboxing is very high quality. And he's able to have such good kickboxing because he's such a fantastic wrestler. The threat of the takedown makes him such a dangerous threat in terms of his striking. And that's why he was able to defeat Stipe in that manner. The thing was, Stipe is a big guy who wanted to wrestle with him, and Stipe's thinking, well, my wrestling can match DC's. Then in that instance, he let DC kind of just limp arm out, and then he got caught, man. And DC would talk about how he worked that type of stuff regularly, and it worked to perfection. And again, that's what makes him such a great striker. And we've seen DC win standing up. We've seen him win on the ground. So we've seen him win with his wrestling. There's so many ways that DC can win this fight, which is why, in my opinion, he's going to. His speed and his pace is what's going to be the difference. But don't get it twisted. Derek Lewis is a beast. He's super strong. He's very athletic. You see him do those flying kicks, and the right hand he has so much power behind it, and it is the type of power that again will put you out. I was actually watching one of the UFC breakdowns, and they talked about he has something like the most significant ground strikes of anyone in the heavyweight division. And a lot of people think, well, like how is that? But once he gets you down, his grounded pound is so vicious. He's so powerful. And one thing that stood out to me also is the fact that he talked about he's been training harder now for this, which means he's taking this fight very serious. And this, to see what he could do when he's on a full training camp, when he's taking it more serious, I'm actually kind of a little bit worried in that respect. But to me, DC is still going to be able to pull this out. And if he doesn't, even if Derek Lewis wins this fight, DC still has an opportunity to take on the light, whoever wins between Gustafsson and John Jones. And DC can be a replacement on that fight if something happens to one of those guys. Or Anthony Smith could be the replacement. And I did forget to mention that Anthony Smith did say he wanted the winner of that fight. And he did feel okay asking, even though he didn't really ask, he made a statement that he wanted a title fight. And I do think the things that he's done and the resume that he's built up in the light heavyweight division so far warrants him getting a title shot. But back to Derek Lewis and DC. Again, Derek Lewis has got power. He's won 9 of his last 10 fights, which is ridiculous. And you talk about guys with like really, really solid win streaks, and the fact that he's only lost 1 fight. He's been in the UFC for a while, and he's finally getting his chance at the title. Like, this is a guy again who's beat some tough opponents, and he's shown that he's got what it takes. He's got a lot of heart. He's got a lot of power. He's very athletic, and DC is very mindful of that. And again, the DC skill set and his mindset, to me, is what is going to make it possible for him to set himself apart. And I'm sorry, guys, for the Chinese in the background. Again, I'm on the train, but I still wanted to make sure I did this for you guys. But yeah, so DC mentally is someone who he understands this from a fighter perspective, but also from an analytical and a commentative perspective, which means he's marking down and studying Derek Lewis on every single level, which is why I think that DC has the ability to pull it out. And again, DC is, you know, anywhere from 240 to 250 when he's training right now, but Derek Lewis is anywhere from like 280, 285 to almost 290, because this guy has to cut down to get to heavyweight. Even though the size difference is a much smaller factor in the heavyweight division, it does play a role. But again, my opinion is that DC is going to win this, and he's going to pull it out, and he's going to still be the heavyweight champ in this instance. Now, who else is on that card? Let's talk about it. Chris Weidman versus Jacare. Now, I was really looking forward to Chris Weidman versus Luke Rockhold too, but Luke Rockhold had to pull out, and a lot of times people kind of knock fighters for pulling out of fights, but Luke Rockhold's looking like he's got some really serious injuries in terms of that fight, and I was actually picking Luke to win if he was the one that was going to be in that. Now that it's Weidman versus Jacare, I'm going to take Chris Weidman in this, and the reason I'm taking Chris is because, to me, his striking and his wrestling is significantly better than Jacare's. Now, don't get me wrong, Jacare's got power in his hands. He's got awesome jiu-jitsu. He's got really good wrestling. But he doesn't have Chris Weidman wrestling. And the thing is, people forget when he first came in how dominant Chris Weidman was. Like, this guy came in and he was the guy to beat Anderson Silva. And he was, he's been a champion, and now he's working his way back to become champion again. And he does definitely have that potential. Now, in my mind, the guy Robert Whittaker is the best 185er in that division. But don't get me, Chris Weidman belongs up there. And then Kevin Gastelum, all these guys, Jacare, they're at the top of the heap, but there's a clear difference between Robert Whittaker and who knows what's going to happen with Yoel Romero, whether or not he's going to stay or he's going to go up to 205. I think he should go up to 205 because this dude he's a beast, he's massive, and he's getting up there in age, so that weight cut definitely takes his toll. But to me, Chris Weidman's going to win this fight. Also, people forget that Chris Weidman has really, really good jiu-jitsu as well. So the thing is like Jacare is not going to just take him to the ground and then dominate when it comes to the jiu-jitsu. Like when it comes to their skill sets, I would say that Weidman wins in the striking, Weidman wins in the wrestling, and then Jacare slightly edges him out in terms of the jiu-jitsu, but not enough to where it's like a complete dominance. And so this is going to be a really good fight. I actually just got done watching again when Jacare went against Gegard Mousasi. And Gegard Mousasi had a lot of trouble because he didn't have the wrestling pedigree that like a Chris Weidman does or a Luke Rockhold does. Like, these guys are great wrestlers, and so when it comes to how they Jacare handles a guy who has really good wrestling, he's not going to be as easily taking Chris Weidman down, which is why he's going to have a lot of trouble in this fight. And again, he's taking this fight on shorter notice, So Weidman's been training, he's been preparing. Now he has a new opponent, but he's got an opponent that I believe, and we all know that he can beat. And Jacare, he's a monster on the ground. He's a very strong fighter, but he's not gonna get this win on such short notice. If he had a full camp and full preparation, I think he would definitely had a chance to defeat him. But right now, I've got to go with Weidman on that. But and this fight card overall 230, it looks like the middleweight Grand Prix, because also on this card we've got Derek Brunson versus Israel Adesanya. Now this fight is really to me what's the quote unquote in my opinion the co-main event, and this is the fight I'm looking forward to the most next to DC Derek Lewis. And now I'm sold on Israel Adesanya. To me, his striking is fantastic. He is easily a top fighter as it comes to the middleweight division, and actually he's one of the people I would like to fight. When I walk around probably about 200 pounds. When I fight, I expect to fight at 185. I don't know if I can make 170. I will, attempt it, but I'm not totally sure I can make it. These are one of the guys that I know once I make it to that level that I will be gunning for, because he is an awesome striker. He's got good wrestling defense. The way he handled Brad Tavares, and I actually wasn't confident that he was going to do what he did to Brad Tavares, but he handled him very well. He's got the skill set to stop the takedown, stay standing, and then if Derek Brunson is gonna rush him, then he's gonna put I feel like he can put him to sleep, because Derek Brunson, he'll come with his head hanging out sometimes, and that's not something you want to do with a guy who is as crisp a striker as Israel Adesanya. And actually, one of my really good friends out here who recently just moved back to New Zealand was really big on Israel, and we were talking about him when he was a Glory kickboxer, so this is again one of his friends from back home, and so one of my good friends actually knew him back in New Zealand, and he lived out in China. He was a kickboxer out here in China as well, and so like it was kind of cool to see him come to the UFC and start to show his skill set off. And I'm really interested to see what he can do when he gets taken down and he's on the ground, how he's developed as a jiu-jitsu player. But I feel like this fight's going to stay on the ground, and that Derek Brunson is really not going to have much for Israel Adesanya. I think that this is the fight to watch. This is going to be probably the second best fight on this card, because Derek Lewis versus DC is going to be the best one. But this fight is also a fight that is going to excite a lot of people. So definitely look out for that one. Derek Brunson versus Israel Adesanya. But again, Whiteman and Jacare is another good fight. I was bummed to find out that Dustin Poirier and Nate Diaz were not going to be on this card. I was actually very much looking forward to this fight, because you got two guys that are really good boxers that are both willing to throw down and bang, as someone would say, and really put on a good show. And it was going to be an awesome fight. But Dustin Poirier is dealing with some tough injuries. And so hopefully he gets healthy from that, and then he can get back in there and fight. But the thing is, I'm getting to the point with Nate Diaz where it's getting really, really annoying having to deal with the fact that this guy hasn't fought since his last loss to Conor. And I want to say, give more respect to Nate, but the fact that he hasn't fought in so long, it's like, how long do you expect people to wait and still say that you're a draw? Like, if you're a draw and you feel like you're gonna put on a good show, come and show us, like, fight. And the thing is, he hasn't done that lately. Like, I was really looking forward to this fight, and now Dana could have found a replacement for this, but the way that Nate looks like Nate has been acting, that's not, obviously now it's too short notice, but that's not going to happen. And the thing is, it's like, how much can people or fans take when it comes to the Diaz brothers in general? I mean, like, yeah, they're real guys, but like they're supposed to be fighters too, and like, if you come to fight, man, like, come to the table, like, we know what your bargaining chips are, we know you're a huge draw. Yes, the fans love to watch you, but like, how much do you expect the fans to take? Sign a contract, get in there and fight, so you can show us what y'all got. And in that, there's a guy who is more than willing to fight these guys who just got signed to the UFC, and apparently this deal is official, and I'm very excited about this. My boy Ben Askren. For those of you that don't know, Ben Askren was released by One Championship, and Demetrius Johnson, the former flyweight champion, was released from the UFC, and they will be switching organizations in essentially what many have called a trade of two big fighters. Obviously, the biggest fighter in One Championship was Ben Askren, and one of the biggest fighters in the UFC was Demetrius Johnson. Now, Demetrius Johnson is actually, I think this is a good move. Like, this is really exciting. And now Ben Askren could fight Nick Diaz, he could fight Nate Diaz, he could fight Khabib, he could fight Colby Covington. One thing I'm wondering is, will Ben be a welterweight? Will they create a new 165 division like everyone's been talking about? Or will he be, he could even be a middleweight, because the way One Championship does it, whatever weight the champion's at is just what the weight moves to, as opposed to having weight cutting, because they don't want their fighters in a situation where they're not healthy. you know. So, but whether it be middleweight, welterweight, or possibly even lightweight, I would love to see Ben Askren fight a lot of these guys. I would love to see him against Nate Diaz. For those of you who don't really know Ben Askren is, he's 18-0. He was a former Bellator champion. He was the one championship champion. And he's 18-0 with 1 no contest. And he has what he calls the funky style wrestling. He's an Olympian when it comes to wrestling. And this guy is highly touted by a lot of guys, especially Tyron Woodley, who's the current UFC welterweight champion. People argue that if there's one of the people in the world that could beat Tyron Woodley, Ben Askren is one of those guys. And it's very interesting because they have a coach-athlete relationship. And so if he does end up going to the welterweight division and he starts, running through the division, which is a real possibility, then he may end up having to fight Tyron Woodley. And so, Tyron having to fight someone who helped to coach and bring him up, and they've been friends for a long time, and they competed at the same university. That would be an interesting dynamic to have to see and to deal with, and it would be very exciting to watch. But my hope is that they do something like create a 165 and then move 170 to 175. I actually think that makes a lot of sense, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. But I'm just very excited for Ben Askren to be moving to the UFC because we've talked about this for a long time, and now it's finally happening, and we're going to see once and for all how good is Ben Askren really. If anybody watches Chael Sonnen, you know how important that phrase is. How good is Conor McGregor? And speaking of Conor, I was very disappointed when Khabib proceeded to whoop that ass. And Conor Khabib, the aftermath of what's going on right now, currently they're both suspended, for those that don't know. The Nevada State Athletic Commission released half of Khabib's purse, and they're still holding another half. And what I believe they're doing now is they decide what the actual punishment is going to be for both of these guys. For that fight, I think they're going to probably do 20 or 30% of penalty for Khabib, and maybe a 3 to 6 month suspension for what he did. And now again, both guys were wrong. Conor messed up from the very beginning. And when you go back and you look at the whole situation, it started out with Khabib basically bitching Artem Lobov, which is what prompted Conor coming to New York, banging on the bus, breaking the window, and all that, which led to him being arrested and having to deal with New York, and then which led to the drama with the press conference, and then Khabib jumping over the cage and proceeding to Karate Kid kick Dylan Dennis, and ended up getting this current suspension, which is what they're dealing with now. And even the brawl within the cage where Conor was hitting one of Khabib's teammates and fighting his brother and all that. All that whole situation was just pure craziness, and it's definitely entertaining, but it was a lot of bullshit to deal with. And right now these guys are dealing with the consequences of their actions, and they have to deal with what's going on there. So I think that, again, Conor's not going to have to deal with any type of suspension, but Khabib is probably going to get something like 3 to 6 months and 20% of his purse. So, I'm trying to think. Oh, boom. Also, I am very excited. We're going to switch gears. Oh, no, let me go back. Sorry. Let me go back. Demetrius Johnson. Let's talk about DJ, Mighty Mouse, being in one championship. I think this is a great move for one championship. I think this is a great move for Demetrius Johnson because in Asia, a lot of the fighters are smaller fighters. Bantamweight, flyweight fighters are a dime a dozen in Asia. As someone who lives in China, and I'm a fighter, it's much harder for me to get fights because bigger guys are at a premium here. But when it comes to guys that are under 155 pounds, they are everywhere. Asians tend to be smaller, so they tend to cut weight to lower weights much easier. So there are going to be a litany of flyweights, bantamweights that Demetrious Johnson can fight. So he's going to have a lot of opportunities to win the belt at flyweight or bantamweight in one championship, and then defend that plenty of times. He's going to make a shitload of money, probably more than he's ever made in the UFC, because from what I heard, also Eddie Alvarez had just signed with one championship. What I heard is an 8-figure deal. So if Eddie Alvarez can get an 8-figure deal, there's no reason Demetrious Johnson can't get an 8-figure deal and get some money in his pocket and excite the fans out here in Asia. And this is going to add a lot of validity to one championship. And again, one of my goals is to eventually fight in my goal is to fight one championship, Bellator, or UFC. And if DJ and Eddie Alvarez are there, it's going to add a lot more prestige to the organization. And if I'm able to when I'm able to then reach that level, it's going to, be even better for me, and it's going to add, again, prestige to wins that you get in this organization because of the quality and caliber fighter that they're starting to get with these two acquisitions. But I think, again, this is a great move for DJ. I'm very happy for him. He's one of my favorite fighters, and you watch some of the stuff he's done, 11 title defenses. He is obviously one of the pound-for-pound greatest of all time as it pertains to fighters, period. And he's just showed pure dominance. And congratulations to him, and good luck to him out there in Singapore. Other things on the bill: Jon Jones versus Alexander Gustafsson is coming up for UFC 232. That is going to be huge. It's supposed to be for the light heavyweight title. We don't know. They said so far that it is. But again, if DC ends up losing versus Derek Lewis, he may want to keep his title at light heavyweight, and that may just be the fight to decide who's going to fight DC. But this is going to be a great fight. We finally get to see Jon Jones come back, hopefully clean, so we don't have to deal with all the bullshit that he's put us through. Again, Jon Jones is one of the greatest athletes, not just fighters, but greatest athletes we've ever seen. Some of the stuff he's done has just been otherworldly in terms of his, title defenses and just his skill set, his athleticism, his length, in terms of his striking and everything, his wrestling. He's arguably one of the greatest fighters of all time. But if he can't keep his shit together, and if he can't stay clean and not test for steroids, then I feel like we can't really place this title upon him. And until we see what he's able to do against Gustafsson, who was arguably his toughest fight ever, had only really had trouble with Gustafsson and DC, and he's been able to beat DC in both instances, but he had the fight of his life with Gustafsson. Even though he unanimously won that last fight, Gustafsson is the guy to beat Jon Jones because he's got similar size. He's actually bigger. He walks around apparently like 230, 235 from what I heard when he was on Joe Rogan's podcast. And Jon Jones is probably walking around like 220, so he's probably got 10 to 15 pounds to cut to get down to 205. So that size, obviously the epic striking of Gustafsson gave Jon Jones a lot of trouble last time. And now that he's been away, and Gustafsson's been out for a while also, it's going to be good to see them both back in there and see what they're able to put together for this fight. I'm picking Jon Jones because you got to go with the guy who's been able to show improve in any of these instances. He's a big winner when it comes to this type of stuff, and I'm excited to see that fight. It's all the way at the end of December, but it's definitely going to be a good one. There's some other good cards coming up. I'll probably get into those in the next podcast. I'm coming up on my stop pretty soon, but I just wanted to say that I am super thankful for everybody who comes and watches this. Hopefully it sounds not too bad. I hope you guys enjoy the podcast. I know there's been stuff in the background. Next time I'll have the audio clean and crisp for you guys, so you don't have to worry about that. But that's going to be it for now. Thank you guys again for watching. This is Sdotbell MMA. Like and subscribe. Peace out. Thank you guys.